inciting incident for this scene is that he picks up a guy named Trowbridge, who turns out to be a little peculiar, and writes something on a $5 bill. So this is part of what you're going to read about here, or what I'm going to try to read to you about Murph. When I got home, I climbed the fire escape to my crow's nest, dropped my cab accoutrement on the kitchen table, and headed for my bookshelves. I plugged my daily take into Finnegan's Wake, then pulled out The Stranger and opened it. Before I put the second fiver into the book, I reread the hand printing. You must harbor a secret in your past, so dreadful and shameful that the mere thought of it sends you lurching violently to the nearest liquor store. Pegged. But, assuming he wasn't writing to me, why would anyone write down such a peculiar statement? What was it that drove Trowbridge, not just to print words on American currency, but to write anything at all? I've been writing unpublished novels since I was in college, and I knew exactly what drove me to do it: money. But why would anybody write for free? Why would anybody write at all? They didn't have to. I was amazed whenever I met students in creative writing classes at college who had no intention of going on to become professional fiction writers. What the hell were they doing in creative writing classes? Seeking self-fulfillment? They could do that kicking a hacky sack. Years later, it occurred to me that they might have just been lying, that they actually intended to try and become novelists, but they just wouldn't admit it. After all, if you tried to become a novelist and failed, people might laugh at you. I've been there. I'm still there. I took one last look at the Crispy, then stuffed it into my Camus. One thing that struck me about the handwriting was that it reminded me of William Faulkner's handwriting. I don't mean the content of the message, but the printing itself. I once saw a sample of William Faulkner's handwriting. That was at a book fair held at Currigan Hall in Midtown a few years back. Being a book lover and collector of paperbacks, I had decided to go to the fair, and just on the off chance that I might find something that I would not only find unique, but also might be able to afford. But let me first explain something to you about book collecting. I like to find my vintage potboilers at flea markets and used bookstores, preferably stores run by people who don't know what they're doing. These types of bookstores might be run by, for example, little old ladies who special in bodice rippers, but who occasionally receive vintage paperbacks that have no cachet with the frustrated housewives who buy Harlequin romances by the bucketful. The owners often put the vintage books on the back obscure racks of the backs of their stores, and then rather than throw them away. I love those little old ladies. They cannot bring themselves to toss the printed word into the trash. Yet at the same time, they have no hope that they will ever sell the books. But they do. They sell them to me. I own a number of mint condition first edition paperbacks written by Jack Kerouac. Thanks to those ladies. And I cannot begin to tell you how my heart throbs every time I walk into a store filled with romance novels. My only fear is that someday all the other Kerouac fans in Denver will learn this secret. I've also found other treasures, such as my first French version of The Plague by Albert Camus, published in 1947. It's printed in French, and the title, La Peste. On the back cover is a picture of Albert himself with a cigarette dangling from his lips. He looks like Jean-Paul Belmondo's black sheep cousin. But buying a vintage paperback at the book fair? Well, that has the taint of cheating. Anybody with the bucks that can scout out and buy a complete set of autographed Kerouac if he felt like it. So obviously it's not just the books themselves, but the thrill of the hunt that appeals to me when it comes to book collecting. Whenever I find a first edition that's worth more than 25 cents demanded by a flea market proprietor, I feel like a crazed sourdough has just discovered the Dutchman's lost gold mine. Fantasy role-playing consumes a large chunk of my life. It's right up there with denial and television. But back to William Faulkner. At the Curtigan Fair, I'd come across a hardback copy of Pylon by Faulkner, which was part of a limited printing and numbered and signed editions. The proprietor allowed me to open the book, and there was Faulkner's signature in the tiniest cramped printing I had ever seen in my life until I met Trowbridge. I'll admit it, it gave me a thrill just holding the book once held by the man from Mississippi. I'm only human. Fame does the same thing to me that it does to the Elvis nuts. Then the proprietor told me the book was priced at $100. I closed the book and handed it back. A few years later, I mentioned this incident to a rare book dealer who told me that I ought to have bought the Faulkner book. You can add a 0 to the price today, he said. He showed me a literary blue book that gave current prices for rare editions. The autographed Pylon was listed at more than $1,000. I can't go on with that story. When I was a kid living in Wichita, our family owned a Sheltie dog. She was a psychotic little bitch. You could feed her a steak dinner, and 10 minutes later, you could look cross-eyed at her and she would go for your ankles. I'll admit it, me and Gavin used to look cross-eyed on purpose, and we always explained to our mom that we did it just to disprove the theory that a dog will not bite the hand that feeds it. My brother and I like to pretend we were scientists, but we were jerks. The Sheltie's name was Sheltine. My sisters named her, of course. But those two little missives from Trowbridge had gotten me to thinking about starting a new novel. Had me put in the mood. Maybe it was seeing somebody else do some actual writing that bent my twig in that direction. Or maybe it was the cosmic combination of words and money. But I could feel the itch to drag my Smith Corona out and start putting words on paper. The desire to write is one of the few desires I possess that doesn't overwhelm me in the way that the desire to drink beer, smoke cigars does, or watch TV, or date, or sleep till noon. I'm not that good at resisting desires, but for some reason I'm able to fend off my desire to write. Sounds inconsistent, if not completely illogical, I know, but there you have it.